Okay, so let's go ahead and begin with our first question. Before we can talk about the future, I'm going to ask each of you a quick question that's going to kind of lay the groundwork for all of us so that you can tell us about some history that brings us up to date for your organization. So Randy, I'm going to start with you with plug-in. This is a hard one only in that it's difficult to try and keep this one short. So can you give us a brief 2-minute summary on electric transportation? Good luck, sir.
Well, we've come a long way since the late 1990s and early 2000s when GM recalled and crushed the EV1. Right now, every major vehicle manufacturer is working on multiple models of electric vehicles, so it's definitely the wave of the future. As of the June 30th, we have about 18,000 electric vehicles in Washington State, and about 69 of those are in Chelan County, and I know for a fact that those have increased since then because Wendy's sitting there and she just bought one. The Chevy Bolt EV, that's a B, with a 238-mile estimated range, and the Tesla Model 3 with a 215-mile plus model range are becoming available, and they are really game changers. They're reasonably priced, so most people will be able to buy one. In fact, between 350,000 and 400,000 people have put down a $1,000 deposit on the Tesla Model 3. That's pretty amazing. Electrification of all forms of transportation are being considered and worked on, including pickup trucks. Tesla's working on one of those. Semi-trucks, Tesla's working on one of those, as well as other people, and aircraft, and buses, as we'll hear about from the Link folks. But although most electric vehicle charging occurs overnight in your garage, public charging stations have been installed across the state, across the nation. You can drive coast to coast and border to border in your electric car using the Tesla Supercharger network or other public charging stations. Plug-in North Central Washington has facilitated installation of 16 charging stations in the North Central Washington area, and more are being installed as we speak. So that's kind of the status of public transportation, electric transportation.
Excellent, thank you. Andrew, with the PUD, you have just unveiled 2 new electric vehicle charging stations. Can you quickly tell us how the PUD became involved with this effort and how you have partnered with Plug-in?
Sure. So during the 2015 to 2019 strategic planning process, the Chelan PUD went out and did a very rigorous public process. There was several different types of advisory teams that were put together. One of them was an electrification advisory team, and out of that team came a recommendation to the board that we should support electric vehicle charging. And in order to do that, the board provided funding for up to, I think we're going to have 5 total public charging stations available when they're all done. And the partnership occurred with Plug-in North Central Washington in the form that we can build electric infrastructure, but then we have to charge for the product. And at this point in time, there's not a lot of really good applications for that charging. That doesn't also increase the cost of the actual charging units. But so we were in this conundrum of how do we keep these things as inexpensive as we can, but then again, how do we recover the cost for them because we need to do so. So we partnered with Plug-in North Central Washington, who has put forward and said, hey, we'll pay for the electricity. You get these things sub-metered, we'll pay for the electricity on these. And so that's sort of how the partnership came about. They were on our advisory team, plus one of our staff member is involved with electric vehicles, renewable energy as well, so he has those connections also. So that's really how that partnership came about, which I think is fantastic because you have a group that wants something, that would like something, and we want to provide the opportunities for our customers, and so we were able to work together on that to be able to put in the infrastructure at the least cost we could, while also making sure that we recover the cost for that.
Perfect, good example, thank you. Eric, okay, so Link is also involved with electric transportation. However, I'm going to hold you off on that one for a minute longer because first I'm hoping I can ask a more community-oriented question. Can you give us, again, a brief 2 minutes, good luck to you, sir, on how our valley's transportation needs have evolved over the last 25 years that Link has been working here for us?
Well, for any of you who've been around for the last 25 years, there's been tremendous growth in our valley with both residential and commercial retail, things like that. 25 years ago, there was no Target, no Costco, no Home Depot, no Walmart, the TTC or the Performing Arts Center weren't here. Residential growth in East Wenatchee has ballooned or blown up in the last 25 years. Fancher Heights was just a handful of homes. Same with Eagle Rock, things like that. So there's been a lot of growth in the whole greater Wenatchee area. So just that many more people moving around has really changed the way things happen. It's caused more congestion on our roadways from both people going to and from work, commercial traffic, trucks, things like that. There's just a lot more happening in the valley itself. There's also been growth in the outlying communities. Chelan and Leavenworth have grown tremendously. Even little communities like Waterville and all the stuff up on the east side of the Columbia River towards Chelan Falls. That stuff wasn't there 25 years ago. So you look at everything as a whole, and it's just a lot more people moving through what is pretty much the same road network as was here 25 years ago. So people are finding different ways to get around. And then there's the issues of people who are aging, the baby boomers. Some of them are starting to not drive, so their transportation needs are changing. How do they get from place to place? Do they rely on family members or public transit, things like that? So it's an interesting question on what the needs are. You can just see there's a lot more demand out there with just the sheer numbers we've seen over the last 25 years. So.
And it will continue to evolve too.
Yes.
And Trent with Pangborn. So you've just completed a major project up there at the airport. Can you also attempt to give us a 2-minute summary on the runway extension?
2 minutes. The runway extension project was a project that was a lot of thought went into that. Long before I arrived on the scene 4 years ago, the people were planning on the need for that runway expansion if the community was going to grow, as was mentioned. What was the airport going to do to grow along with it? And so that project was to lengthen the runway out to 7,000 feet so that we could accommodate the fleet of aircraft that we foresee coming in here, as well as the existing fleet. The project cost about $30 million to complete. That was funded primarily by the FAA at 90% of the cost. The ports of Chelan and Douglas counties paid the balance of that 10% local match for that project. Had they not done that, that project never would have got off the ground. The project was done in a matter of 3 years, on time and under budget. I'm pretty proud of that aspect, that we were able to do that. That doesn't typically happen on a project of that size. A lot went into it. We had to relocate one of the biggest roads in, well, I think it is the biggest road in Douglas County, Grant Road. Had to relocate a lot of utilities, all the infrastructure, and purchase a lot of property to make that project come to fruition. So it was a lot of hard work to get to where we are today, but now that project is complete.
Great, thank you, all of you, for the background information. Now, the second set of questions, this is about really the future benefits of what your current work is delivering or will deliver to our community. Each of your different organizations are involved in different work that is going to deliver a variety of different benefits to us. So Andrew, I'm going to start with you with the PUD. Tell us about some of the community benefits that will be a result of these electric vehicle charging stations.
I think one is that the commissioners showed their support for something that the community wanted. And so we're able to show our support for customers' choice in electric vehicles. But beyond that, I think it also provides, these are new sources of load, and they may act differently than other sorts that we've seen in the past. So this provides us with a chance to gather data and learn on a smaller scale, a pilot type scale of what's really going on, what's happening there, what are the impacts and the benefits to that. And so beyond just that first port, gathering the data is important to us as well. And so because partially our challenge with the utility is our business model is based off of where the electricity we sell out on the wholesale market is generally at a cost greater or at a price greater than what we receive from a retail perspective. So we're having to figure out, okay, what's this going to look like over the future when, if we have this increasing load that comes in, and as well, and how that impacts our general our valuation of conservation, for example. So we value conservation a lot. And so how do we bridge those two gaps? And so for us, it's a learning opportunity. It's a learning experience for us to be able to help get information and help us to balance on that.
Quick definition of load for
Oh,
us.
sorry. Yeah,
It's okay.
exactly.
Yeah,
Load,
for the-
it's how much energy, or it's a type of energy that's being used. It's a energy, it's a basically, if you plug your phone in to charge it, you're creating a load on the system. So when you unplug it, then it's gone. And so this is plugging something new in, whereas historically, we put a big value on reducing that over time. So.
I think the data too that you'll collect will be an interesting story to tell. Is that something you'll be sharing out with the community too?
At some point, I believe it will be. It's going to take us a couple of years to get that. So, and we're putting in
And to
special
figure out what
meters
it
just for
means.
that.
Right.
So, yeah.
Okay. Trent, back to you here. So having the ability to fly out of Pangbourne for a family vacation is definitely a benefit for those of us in the community, but there are also economic benefits to our region as well, especially with this airport expansion. Can you tell us a little bit about the potential that exists there?
Sure. Well, I see the airport as it's an asset to the community. It's an economic engine. We may not generate a lot of revenue directly at the airport, but there's the businesses and goods and services and people that pass through it all contribute into the local economy. Anytime you order something, you want it next day air. That's how it's getting here. The fire protection services, when we had wildland fires last year, the airport was a huge part of that component. There's businesses that operate directly as a result of providing those types of services. The air ambulance service is a huge benefit to the community. One of the things I'd also mention would be that places like down in Quincy, the tech companies that are down there, they mention when they're looking for providing service for different businesses, one of the things they say is, well, and we're only 15 minutes away from a commercial service airport. They value that, having that accessibility. Sometimes that makes the difference in being able to connect quickly with folks is being able to use the air service. So there's a variety of things that are derived as a result of having the airport.
Any quick mention of some future hopes?
Future, sure, yeah.
And we'll touch more on this in the third question too, but I want to tease out a little bit right now.
Yeah, so one of the benefits of that runway extension is there's the opportunity for us to attract additional air service. Other business aircraft that could now use the airport that couldn't. So there's those corporate type of flying that does come in and out. We've actually seen some growth in that market as well. Business aviation is taking off where the recreational, pardon the pun there, where the general aviation's hobby
no one else
type.
caught that pun. I have to back up.
Yeah,
Can you
taking
repeat that,
off.
sir?
Yeah,
so
sorry.
that
Yeah. All right. Thank you. General aviation, you could say, is probably more on a decline. The single-engine Cessna that your grandparents had and passed down. We don't see as much of that activity where we're seeing it more on the corporate side of things. So having the runway extension opens up some other opportunities there as well.
Great. Eric, so what about the economic benefits of electric buses? You've made and plan to make more investments there, and you can compare that to diesel that you have used in the past, and maybe why the investment in making those changes?
The real economic benefits of electric versus diesel come in just the fuel savings costs. The old red trolleys we used to run downtown a number of years ago, those cost us about $1,450 per month per vehicle in diesel fuel. The little green buses you see running that we have out on the streets when they operate, they've been out there for 3 or 4 years. Those cost about $80 a month in electric per vehicle. So there's a huge benefit in fuel, or in savings just in the fuel cost there. Unfortunately, the vehicles themselves are about $150,000 more than a comparable sized diesel bus. So there's a big payback time, about 9.5 years at current diesel prices to recover that extra vehicle cost. So the cost of the vehicles is coming down as the technology advances and becomes more mainstream. 5 years ago or 6 years ago, there was only a couple bus manufacturers in the country doing electric. Now virtually every transit bus company is building one or two different electric vehicles. So that technology is becoming much more widespread, and you're seeing systems across the country adopt it. Here it makes sense because we have such low power rates. But you're even seeing it being adopted in LA and places where power's 5, 6, 7 times more expensive than it is here. But it really makes sense here to do it. Why we went that way, the federal government had some grant funding available that came in at a time when we needed to replace those old red trolleys, and we were able to secure grant funding to buy the green buses. We've since secured 2 additional grants, which are allowing us to buy, we have 5 more buses that are coming here later this fall, and then placing another order next spring for 5 more. Those will all be a 35-foot bus as compared to the little green ones, which are about 22 feet. So they'll be a full-size bus, capable of running all the in-town routes, things like that. So the economic benefits are great when it's not, local money being spent. We needed to replace the buses anyway. We just didn't have the financial resources to do that at the time. The Fed stepped in, and it was great.
So instead of looking at a 9-year time frame for the return on investment to begin to pay back, what is it looking like now because of the grant funds?
Well, our match on the buses we purchase is about a 10 or 15%. So instead of 9 years, I guess you could say it's 15% of that. So a couple years maybe.
Nice, good planning. Randy, so tell us about the economic benefits of driving an electric vehicle, and there are benefits economically for both the individual consumer and driver and for the community too.
Yeah. Well, first of all, electric vehicles are less expensive to operate and maintain, as we just heard. At our retail rate of 3 cents a kilowatt hour for residential energy, that is equivalent to 20 cents a gallon gasoline. So that puts it in a real close perspective there. And per mile, it costs about 9/10 of a cent for an electric vehicle for fuel, compared to 14 to 19 cents for a comparable sized gas-powered sedan. Electric vehicles require much less maintenance. Unlike the buses, the Nissan Leaf that Ann and I just completed a lease of was very reliable, and we calculate that we saved almost $3,000 in fuel and maintenance over the 4-year lease. So that's pretty significant for an individual.
Not to mention the time that you saved when you don't have to take it in for oil changes repeatedly, et cetera.
Yes, and the time you save not going to a gas station. Wendy was mentioning how much she likes plugging her Leaf in at night, and in the morning it's full. And sometimes people say, well, how long does it take to charge your car? And you can say about 5 seconds, because that's how long it takes me to plug it in at night and go to bed. And the next morning it's charged. So that's very convenient. Electric rates are regulated and stable, unlike gasoline, as we're well aware. And the really important thing for the community is our fuel dollars stay in the community. If 1% of Chelan County vehicles were electric, we would save up to $1 million annually that could circulate in our local economy. If 25% were electric, we could save up to $48 million annually that could circulate in our economy. So these savings apply to individuals and to fleet owners. So that's pretty significant. Fossil fuels have no emissions. Now granted, we have pretty clean air here in Chelan County, but we do have our problems in the wintertime with inversions and things like that. But fossil fuel vehicles are the largest single source of climate changing gases in Washington state. It's pretty significant. It's not industry, it's not power production, it's the vehicles that we all drive. So driving an electric vehicle is the greatest single thing we as individuals can do to reduce climate changing gas emissions. And we can do that.
And with dropping prices, I think hopefully more and more people will participate.
Yeah, and the drivers of electric vehicles use their nav system or smartphone app to find charging stations. So businesses or municipalities can list their charger there for free, and they get free advertising and attract electric vehicle drivers.
It's also quite handy, and I can attest to this because I drove a Leaf for 4 years. I could use the app on my phone to pre-warm my car on a cold winter day when I left my office.
That's right.
Yeah, yep, not bad. Or even at the college where I work, yeah. Fabulous.